In my last video, I spoke about a practical, tactical skill of how to deal with arrogance in oneself. It's about reality thinking. But what happens if the arrogance is pathogenic? You see, sometimes what can happen is that a child, when they're growing up, they experience affects, which is very powerful, strong emotions. And they feel extremely, extremely uncomfortable. And they don't want these strong emotions to come out in action. And they don't have, because they're a child and their intellect hasn't developed, they haven't learned the skills that it's okay to feel uncomfortable. And this is a skill set. They don't have these skills. And what happens is, if they would have those skills and they would allow themselves to feel uncomfortable, then what happens, the person's internal system self-regulates. But they didn't do that. They didn't allow themselves, because there were such strong emotions, such strong all or nothing thinking, that they didn't allow themselves to feel uncomfortable. It was too difficult. It was trauma. So what the person sometimes does without realizing is they split. And they say, well, I'm not this person with these bad feelings. That's not me. I'm all good, grand, and superior. And that's how they protect themselves from the affects, the strong emotions, and those negative repercussions, the negative actions that can come from that. But in order to protect their grand, superior Govalev, they then need to put everything around them down, and they put people around them down, and it's a narcissistic personality disorder. And by disorder, I mean to say that it becomes very difficult to live with a significant other, because they don't have a healthy way of seeing themselves as a mix of good and bad intentions and good and bad feelings. They did a split. So when they see somebody else, they can't see them for what they really are. And we're going to use a metaphor of a necklace. This is a necklace. And on the necklace there are beads, and there's a string or two strings, and they tie together and they're really one string. And the beads on the necklace represent a person's actions, which a person does one after another. And when that person who has this grandiose self, when they see somebody else's actions, they don't see the string behind it. They don't see the person for what they are behind it. And what they do often is they transfer their negative intentions, their strong affects, onto the other person. And they consider as if the other person has these affects and their actions because of this bad intention, and that action was because of another bad intention. And sometimes, at different times, what they do is they transfer their all good intentions onto somebody else's action, and it's unrealistic. They don't see the person for what they are. They are being unrealistically positive towards the other person, and then they go back. And the truth is that a person is a mixture of good, noble, and bad, and centered on self intentions. Now, if a person is in this dynamic, they have this severe narcissistic personality disorder, they're going to need to recognize this dynamic in order for them to get out of it. But something interesting comes out from all this, that protecting kids from trauma is going to protect them from developing such an unhealthy structure. Also teaching kids how to be okay with feeling uncomfortable skills. And ourselves practicing the skills associated with learning how to feel uncomfortable, it protects us from splitting and from doing devalue. So it turns out, by way of extension, that coping skills and being okay with feeling uncomfortable skills, by way of extension, help us fulfill lidamus b'derachav, to emulate his ways, because it helps to protect us from devalue, arrogance and grandiosity. So in this video you learned about, and in the last two videos you've learned about two skills of how to tactically deal with devalue, reality thinking, and in this video you learned about the skills of how to be okay with feeling uncomfortable and how that protects us, that re-regulates a person's system, that they're able to, that the affects won't be so extreme, and a person won't need to split and create a superior, grandiose and all good devalue self in order to protect themselves from the affects, because you're directly dealing with the affects, because when you specifically allow yourself to feel uncomfortable, the affects will regulate. They will become less strong by themselves, and then you won't have devalue. You'll be able to see yourself in a more realistic way, as a mixture of good and bad intentions, and you'll be able to see other people for what they really are and respect them in the appropriate way. Hey, this has been the second video on the topic of arrogance. If you found this video interesting, subscribe, post a comment, ask a question, and we're going to see you in the next video.